So what's the real story on Mormon polygamy, polyandry, and even the spiritual wife system? We hear a lot of discussion, on the basics of polygamy and a lot of the same material regurgitated constantly on the internet. And I'd like to, I've researched things for years with regards to church history and, American and world history, and learned that the story that's disseminated by the large conglomerate agencies, in the media, as well as the church's own large corporate conglomerate agencies in their media, anything from Bonneville International and the many news agencies the church owns, and so forth, and its publishing empire. To the correlation department and the correlated manuals for study that the church uses to filter information that the members of the church receive, and give a particular view of history that actually does not include a lot of very important detail and gives an entirely different story of the church's history and its doctrines and so forth. So we're going to look at some of that. One of the reasons is I saw this video that this young gal did. She calls herself the Mormon Next Door. Seems like a real nice girl. She's trying to clear up what she believes are misconceptions about the church and polygamy. And she's got other videos too. And I'm sure she's a real nice girl, but she winds up towing the party line and becoming a tool in actually creating the false image that's out there of church history and doctrine.
Polygamy. Now, if you're one of those people who is apprehensive about the subject of polygamy, like maybe you don't understand it, you don't approve of it, to be honest, you are not alone to talk about, because I just don't like the subject all that much. But I've seen so many misconceptions about polygamy regarding the LDS Church that I knew it was important that I post a video about it. So here we go. The shortest way to describe the LDS Church. Okay, so let's go to the church history. In the 1800s, polygamy was practiced in the LDS Church because of what Mormons believe was a revelation given to the prophet Joseph Smith at the time. Now, it's interesting to note that in biblical times, polygamy was permitted to be practiced during some times, like with Abraham or Jacob, but then in other times, it was not permitted, like in the New Testament days. But there really is no official reason that is described in the Bible, so we kind of take it on faith. Now, similarly, during the 19th century, for about a 50-year period, Mormons believe God commanded some Mormons to practice polygamy, and there were 3 reasons given specifically for that. The first reason was an ancient practice needed to be restored in order to fulfill a prophecy. So that was the first reason given. The second reason was that God wanted to help jumpstart membership in the LDS Church because we believe that we're a restored church from ancient times, and that He wanted to create more members, and if there's more women who are married and having children, then there's more membership. So that was reason number 2. Regarding reason number 3, Mormons believe that while you don't have to be married to go to the celestial kingdom, which is the highest kingdom of heaven, within that celestial kingdom, and you can find more information about that in my after death video, by the way, but within the celestial kingdom there are varying degrees, and the top degree can only be obtained by those who are married. Polygamy allowed more women specifically the opportunity to reach the highest kingdom, which anticipated a shortage of worthy men, I guess. So that was the third reason.
Okay, so on her reason number 1, it needed to be restored for a time to fulfill prophecy. Yeah, the prophecy of the restoration of polygamy, right? Where do I find that one? He is restoring something that never was. In other words, to restore something, you have to have it in the first place. And so if he's saying that polygamy was commanded of God, as I believe he does say in some scripture. I don't see that in the book of Genesis. And although the book of Genesis does mention concubinage, which Joseph Smith's section 132 also approves of, and some plural marriage, what is the historicity of the book of Genesis? Did Moses really write Genesis? Did Moses really exist? Supposedly around 1300 BC, not too far from there, and that's when the Jews claimed that Moses wrote the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch. Well, if we look carefully at the books of Moses, we can see that not only did he write about some things that who knows where he got all the notes from what happened from Adam till his time, the sexcapades of Judah and his sons, and all these private details that you wouldn't think you'd have, but it goes long after Moses would have been dead. Most biblical scholars agree that several Jewish authors put together the books of Moses starting around 700 BC. It's pretty plain that Genesis has got several authors in it for the creation story. Anyway, we're not going to belabor that. There's nothing to restore that we can see. Second of all, to jumpstart church growth and multiply and replenish the earth, 2 factors involved with that. I'll just start off with the part about Utah census. Well, it basically shows that there were more men than women, not the other way around. So, although I don't know what the church population, demographics were at the time of Joseph Smith, with Brigham Young, during, much of his reign there, what we see from census tracts are that there were more men than women. So people like Brigham were depriving other men of their opportunity to gain entrance into the highest Masonic degree of the celestial kingdom. I say Masonic because degrees come from Masonry, or it's Masonic language, as we see demonstrated in many things Joseph Smith did, including the creation of Relief Society. Lots of Masonic language there. And organized day after he became a Master Mason. Just a coincidence. Nothing to worry about. So, along those lines, also look at Brigham Young. He had 50-some wives and 60-some children. That's not a whole lot of production per woman there. That's less than 2. It's like 1 point something. That's not replenishing the earth. Sorry about that one. Now let's take a look at what the Book of Mormon says about this whole business about polygamy and see if we're restoring something that the Lord instituted here. We're in Jacob chapter 2 of the Book of Mormon, and what it proclaims is exactly the opposite of what Joseph Smith has in his section 132 revelation with regards to David and Solomon and their practice of having many ladies. Okay, so it says here that there was a problem with that among Jacob's people. He was Nephi's younger brother. It says, for they seek to excuse themselves in committing whoredoms because of the things which were written concerning David and Solomon his son. Behold, David and Solomon truly had many wives and concubines, which thing was abominable, see that, before me, saith the Lord. Not any man among you have save it be one wife, and concubines ye shall have none. For I, the Lord, delight in the chastity of women, and whoredoms are an abomination before me. Thus saith the Lord of hosts. And if you disobey me, I'll curse you. And now we've got the, for if I will, saith the Lord of hosts, raise up seed unto me, I will command my people. Otherwise, they shall hearken unto these things. Okay, well, so no, so that last verse is the one that the brethren, I suppose, have used to give some sort of justification of what they call scriptural, the raising up of seed. But as we've seen, with Brigham Young and so forth, 1 child per wife, that ain't replenishing the earth or raising up much seed unto the Lord. So Joseph Smith says exactly the opposite in where he says the Lord is saying it in section 132, where he okays David and Saul. He says that he gave them their wives by Nathan the prophet to David, and then everything was good except for the deal with Bathsheba and then whacking her husband, setting him up to get killed. After he had impregnated her. that was bad. But Section 132 says the complete opposite, that he okayed David and Solomon. And we'll see more on that in concubinage, which Joseph Smith uses in his doctrine to convince women to be spiritual wives. And I'm not talking about polygamy, I'm talking about life for the night. For they shall not lead away the captive the daughters of my people, because of their tenderness. Save I shall visit them with a sore curse, even unto destruction. For they shall not commit whoredoms, like unto them of old, saith the Lord of hosts. Wow. And that's just exactly what we see going on in Nauvoo. The opposite of what the Lord condemns it here, apparently, through Joseph Smith's interpretation of the Book of Mormon, and that's what he practiced in Nauvoo. And so her point number 3 was that it just allowed more women to obtain the highest degree of the celestial kingdom. In other words, goddesshood and exaltation, because of a shortage of worthy males. So we'll take a look at what that's all about now. Okay, so a lot of doctrines that were taught are not openly taught anymore in the LDS Church, so they will be unfamiliar to some folks who just read the correlated Sunday school, priesthood, and Relief Society material rather than look at original source material. You won't find journal discourses or the documentary history of the church on LDS.org. I certainly haven't, nor the diaries of the early saints. Only the filtered accounts that are useful in promoting what the Public Relations Department and the Correlation Department want to promote. So back in the earlier days, the whole celestial marriage thing was a lot different. Celestial marriage is plural marriage, not just eternal marriage. And the doctrine was taught by Brigham Young that you had to have more than one wife in order to inherit exaltation. Also, the women were encouraged to be sealed to someone who was going to be a god, thereby assuring their own exaltation. And so even in the temple, in the celestial room, from what I have read from people who have sworn affidavits out, they were taught that that the women did not need to regard their current Gentile legal marriage to their husbands as valid. It was of man and not of God, and to assure their salvation they were at liberty to dump their husbands and find somebody higher up in the priesthood who was likely to be exalted on high. Through that doctrine and having to be sealed to someone who was going to be a god, even men were sealed to men. For instance, men were sealed to Brigham Young. John Doyle Lee was, as an adopted son. Of course, that's more holy than being sealed to a woman, apparently. You had to have that done in a temple. So Joseph Smith, the prophet of the Restoration, was to restore. What was he to restore? Pay attention to some symbols. Sometimes we overlook what's in plain sight. Well, the excuses that were given through that nice girl didn't hold up. None of them did. This rabbit hole gets a lot deeper. So we're going to explore it in the following videos and see exactly what the scoop was. The dozen guys whose wives Joseph Smith stole had to go out and find another wife because he was sealed to them, even if the church apologists that say he wasn't having intimate relations with them, even if that's correct, which is highly unlikely, he destroyed their families. These guys had to go find new wives to be sealed to. Maybe they couldn't afford that. Maybe they were in love with their wife. Maybe they were actually loyal men. According to Mormon doctrine, then, Joseph stole their wives for all eternity and destroying their celestial family dream. So ponder that in these pentagrams and sing Families Can Be Together Forever while we load the next video.